The moment that changed everything happened in less than a second. On a sun-scorched sidewalk where nobody ever slowed down, a thin, barefoot girl lunged forward from the shadows and slapped a silver spoon out of a billionaire's hand, sending it clattering across marble tiles in front of one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Security moved instinctively, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to freeze. The girl looked half-starved and trembling, her clothes hanging from her like borrowed fabric, her eyes wide not with fear of punishment but with desperate urgency. Whatever she had seen in that plate was something no amount of money could fix once swallowed. Before the story pulls you deeper into what happened next, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that help can come from the most unexpected places, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can keep reaching hearts like yours. The man standing at the center of this stunned circle was Adrian Wolfe, a name that meant power, wealth, and untouchable success. He had built an empire from nothing, or so the magazines claimed, rising from a modest childhood to become one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His face appeared on business covers, his voice shaped markets, and his signature moved fortunes. People waited years to sit at the same table as him, yet here he was, halted mid-motion by a beggar girl most people would have stepped around without seeing. His lunch had been a ceremonial tasting prepared by a celebrity chef as part of a charity luncheon hosted on the restaurant's terrace. A public gesture meant to polish reputations and reassure donors. Everything had been planned to perfection, except the girl. Her name was Lena, though almost no one knew it. She lived on the edges of the city, in abandoned corners where broken concrete and rusted fences marked the boundary between survival and disappearance. She begged not because she wanted to, but because the city had taught her early that being invisible was dangerous. At 12 years old, she had learned to read people the way others read books, watching hands, eyes, movements, and patterns. Hunger sharpened her senses. Loss taught her caution. She had lost her mother to a meal that promised comfort and delivered death, sold cheaply by a street vendor who vanished the next day. Since then, Lena trusted her instincts more than any adult's assurances. That day, she had been drawn toward the restaurant by the smell of food, a cruel reminder of everything she lacked. She stood near the edge, hoping for leftovers or a dropped coin, watching plates glide past like treasures behind glass. As the chef placed the final dish in front of Adrian, something caught her eye. It was subtle, something most people would miss entirely, but Lena had seen it before. A faint discoloration near the garnish, a powdery sheen that didn't belong. Her chest tightened with recognition, and without thinking of consequences, she ran forward. Hunger, fear, and memory collided into one reckless act. Security restrained her almost instantly, and outrage bubbled from the guests. How dare she touch him? How dare she disrupt perfection? Adrian himself stood silent, his gaze fixed not on the fallen spoon but on the girl's face. Years of boardroom battles had trained him to read lies, yet what he saw there was raw sincerity. Still, instinct told him to dismiss it as chaos, as nuisance, as something money and guards could erase. He could have ordered her removed and continued his meal within seconds. That was the version of himself the world expected. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her eyes never left the plate, not even when hands gripped her arms. Maybe it was the memory of his own childhood hunger, long buried under tailored suits and private jets. Against protocol and expectation, he raised a hand and asked for the dish to be examined. Murmurs turned to confusion, confusion to irritation, but the request was made. Minutes later, those same murmurs collapsed into stunned silence when a preliminary test revealed contamination. It wasn't dramatic poison meant for assassins, just enough to cause organ failure over time, undetectable until too late. An error, sabotage, or negligence no one knew yet. What mattered was that the girl had been right. News of the incident spread like wildfire, but Lena did not see headlines. She was taken to a holding room, given water, and left alone with her shaking hands. Fear finally caught up to her then. She had acted on instinct, but instincts didn't protect you from powerful people once the moment passed. She expected punishment, disappearance, or worse. Instead, a doctor examined her, noting malnutrition and old injuries. Hours later, Adrian walked into the room, no cameras, no entourage, just a man carrying the weight of a truth he could no longer ignore. Adrian's life had been built on control. Every risk was calculated, every variable managed. Yet a starving child had saved him without knowing his name, his worth, or his importance. It shattered something rigid inside him. He ordered that Lena be cared for, fed, and sheltered, not as charity optics, but as responsibility. Still, care could not undo years of neglect in a single night. Lena struggled with abundance, flinching at sudden movements, hoarding bread even when told more would come. Trust did not arrive with clean clothes or warm beds. As days passed, Adrian found himself visiting the shelter he funded for her care, drawn by questions he had avoided his entire life. He learned about the alley she slept in, the dangers she navigated, and the systems that failed her long before she failed them. He saw in her not just gratitude but resilience, and a quiet intelligence sharpened by survival. Lena in turn watched him, cautiously. To her, rich men had always been distant figures, either cruel or careless. Adrian confused her. He listened. He looked uncomfortable in silence. He seemed haunted. Investigations into the contaminated meal uncovered a larger truth. A supplier had been cutting corners across multiple venues, endangering countless lives to save money. Adrian used his influence not to quietly bury the issue but to expose it fully, shutting down operations and pushing for stricter oversight. The move cost him allies and short-term profits, but it also saved lives. For the first time in years, he felt his power doing something real. Lena's challenges did not vanish with safety. Nightmares woke her screaming. Classrooms overwhelmed her. She carried guilt for her mother's death and confusion over why she survived when so many didn't. Adrian arranged therapy, education, and stability, yet he learned that saving someone was not a single act but a long, patient commitment. There were setbacks, moments when Lena pushed everyone away, convinced this kindness would evaporate like all the others. Each time, Adrian stayed. Months turned into a year. Lena grew stronger, taller, her eyes less hollow. She discovered a love for science, fascinated by how small changes could mean life or death, how knowledge could protect where luck failed. Adrian watched her presentations with pride he had never felt closing a deal. In saving his life, she had redirected it. He began funding programs for street children, not as faceless donations but as pathways, modeled after what actually helped Lena heal. The city slowly changed, not because one billionaire decided to be generous, but because one child had forced him to see. The anniversary of that day arrived quietly. No cameras, no speeches. Adrian and Lena shared a simple meal at a modest table, safe, tested, and ordinary. Ordinary had become extraordinary to them. Lena no longer hoarded food. Adrian no longer rushed through meals or moments. Both had learned that survival was not just about avoiding death, but about choosing to care when it was inconvenient. Just before the story reaches its end, we have a special request for you. Please pause for a second and comment below with a single word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter, and they help others find stories like this one. In the years that followed, Lena stood on a stage of her own choosing, not as a beggar girl but as a young woman speaking about food safety, ethics, and the unseen cost of neglect. Adrian sat in the audience, no longer the center of attention, and that felt right. The world still moved too fast, still overlooked too many children standing at the edges. But change had started somewhere specific, on a sidewalk where someone chose to act instead of look away. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can come from the least expected place and still change everything, please like this video, share it, and leave a heartfelt comment. Your engagement tells us these stories matter, and it helps spread a message the world desperately needs. The billionaire lived because a beggar girl refused to be silent. And in saving him, she found a future where her voice would never be ignored again.